Okay, everybody. Hello, hello. Hi, hi, hi. Hi, 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 hi. Welcome in. Welcome in. Wow, it's so great to see all you again. Day two. How are we feeling? Are we feeling good? Emojis? Anybody? Siwon's got a thumbs up. Ooh, Jongwoo's also got a thumbs up. Love to see it. Those are the easiest ones to give, right? Thumbs up. We've got a laughing one, or maybe a rocket ship. I don't really know what the rocket ship would be for, but yes, we can send up some rockets. But I'm so glad to be seeing everyone and seeing you all again. I wonder, is this everybody? We got a few absent today. That's okay. Let's see. Daehyun's not here. Hyun's not here. Okay, but they're absent. That's okay. Great. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to be talking about cognitive biases. Oh, how are we doing? Everybody has headphones on? Ready? You can hear me well? Can hear me good? Okay, awesome. Just making sure. I was talking to some people taking off their headphones, so I'm going to go ahead and share my slides with you, and we can go ahead and get started. And thanks everybody for being on time and early. Looks like someone got you into class nice and early, which is great. Very helpful for me so that I can start on time and we can get through all of our lesson today. I just wanted to start off class and remind us of our wonderful recipe that we brought together last time. Our 4 cups of participation and a few cups of bravery for our souls. Today, I will likely be calling on you a little bit more than I did yesterday. So I'd love to get us all talking, and it's okay if you are a little slow and aren't sure of the words at first, and that's okay. But I'll try to call on everyone. And Soyeon, were you here yesterday? Let me check. Yes. No. Hi, welcome. I think there are a few of you who were maybe not here yesterday, but so nice to see your face. Welcome to class. And my name's Professor Holloway, and that's what you will be knowing me by for the next year. So thanks so much for being here, and I am so excited to have you here. Maybe a few of you. One June as well, maybe. Awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I keep saying let's get started, and then I just don't start for you guys, but that's okay. So today we're going to be talking about cognitive biases, which you hopefully read a lot about in your pre-class work. You know a bunch of different cognitive biases. You don't have to memorize them, of course, but you got a few of them. Before we get into the cognitive biases, I want to start with just our learning targets for the day. So we remember our learning targets. Yes, maybe, possibly. A few nods here and there. Yes, I remember these, Professor. Yes, possibly. So today we're going to be building on our learning targets and we're going to be talking about problem solving, ethical decision making, and critical thinking. And before we get into it, I would love to ask someone, how do you think these learning targets will be used today during class? We're talking about cognitive biases today. So, how do you think we might use one of these learning targets in class today? Take some brave souls, some hands. Anybody got any ideas? C1, our first brave soul of the day. Go ahead.
Uh, there are a lot of cognitive bias that can happen in our everyday lives, and we could try to solve that by trying to reduce the bias we have or trying to identify it and solve the problems that could come with cognitive bias.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example for sure. So that encompasses almost problem solving and ethical decision making. This idea of we're trying to solve a problem. Maybe that problem is coming from our biases, and whether or not it's ethical to be using that bias in a situation that we come across in our everyday life, right? So great example there, C1. Like to see it. Anybody have any other ideas of how we might use critical thinking or problem solving in another way in this class? Maybe Jamin, any ideas?
Uh, we can use critical thinking and problem solving uh, while listening others' ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we'll be using both of those when we listen to each other in breakouts to solve problems and really just think critically about the biases we're using, right? Since today we're talking just about biases. So great. Thanks so much for that answer. Okay, let's go ahead and move to a little recap on our last class. So in the previous class, you guys learned about algorithmic thinking, right? So different from biases, we did critical and algorithmic thinking, but algorithms we learned are not are trained through humans, right? They're trained by me and you, algorithms. We are the ones creating the algorithms. And as you might have noticed, we make mistakes when we write these algorithms. And that might be assuming that someone knows exactly what the top of the bread is, right? And we saw in that video that the top of the bread is this part for one and maybe the side for another person. And so today we're going to talk about how we might learn from those mistakes and how we can correct those assumptions about the way people think. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and move to our glossary. So give me one moment here while I come out of here and we go to our glossary document. And I sent out a little announcement on Canvas or on your HY On platform, the Hanyang On. So you should hopefully have seen my little announcement about trying to fill this in before class with any words that you might not know. And it looks like a few people have put in some words here. We've got conspiracy, a secret plan to do something unlawful or harmful, or heuristic, a method to solve a problem with experiences, which this is a really good one to have for today, since a bias is a mental shortcut that we can take. And those are it's the way we use a bias is that heuristic, that shortcut to solve another problem with the experiences that we have. An even number, always good to have simple and good definitions. And then credence. Nice. And I want to go ahead and define bias for us since we're talking about cognitive biases today. I'd love to hear from someone in our wonderful class and ask, what is a bias? Does anyone want to give me a definition of what they think a bias is? Let's go to someone we haven't heard from yet today. Any brave souls? Nobody? What is a bias? Let's go to Hyojin. You have any guesses about what a bias might be?
judgment without proper understanding.
Sorry, say that one more time.
Uh, Judgment without proper understanding.
Without proper understanding. I think you said something at the beginning, but I can't hear you too well. But I think maybe like making a decision without proper understanding would be something similar to what you said. Yeah. You think is this yeah?
Yes,
Yeah. 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 So that's definitely a part of bias, but I wouldn't maybe it's not exactly what we're looking for with a bias. Does anyone have another idea of what it could be? Maybe Yesul?
I think bias is the method that a few things is only right or wrong.
Okay. So what do you mean by that? Like maybe we take a few things and we say, oh, if they're all like this, then if these three are like this, then all of them are like this? Is that what you mean, or do you mean something different?
Maybe, for example, I thought that bias is although have a bad effect, but reading the pre-class work, I knew that bias not only have the bad effect, it also have the good part of it.
Ah, I love that. Okay. I love that. Thank you for expanding there. That was great. Because you're totally right. Biases can have a bad effect, but they can also be helpful tools for taking a mental shortcut down the road. And you will see that in your breakout groups today, that you'll make a little shortcut by using a bias. So thanks, Yesul, for expanding on that a little. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the textbook definition of a bias, and then I'll have someone read it out for me. Give me one moment. So, can I have someone read this out to me? Maybe Unsol?
Bias is a natural inclination for or against an idea, object, group, or individual. It is often learned and is highly dependent on variables such as a person's socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, educational background, gender expression, gender identity, and religion.
Great. Thanks, Unsol. Uh, yes, and there is a lot of big old words there in this definition, but really just the first sentence, this natural inclination for or against an object, idea, group, or individual. It's this idea that we think something that we've learned in our past lifetime and we apply it to something else that is new to us. And so we might make a shortcut in our mind thinking, oh, I've learned this way and I can only learn this way in the future. So we'll be talking about biases throughout this entire class and learning a little bit more about how to identify them and how to avoid them or use them for good. So great job. Thanks everybody for answering these questions. And we're going to go into our warm up for today, which is this question. When might biases influence the way we make decisions? I'd love to have someone answer this question. When might biases influence the way we make decisions? No brave souls out there? Well, that's okay. Because if there's no brave souls, then maybe I'll just call on someone, which I don't like to do it, but I guess I have to. So let's go to Dongha and ask, when might biases influence the way we make decisions?
Mm, when we need intuitions.
Intuitions?
Yes.
Yeah. When we're just taking our first intuition, right? Maybe we don't understand the information that we're getting, or if there's a lot of information, and we're just trying to take our first best guess at it, which I encourage you all to do in this class, making your best guess. So that's definitely one way we might use a bias to make a decision. Daeyoon, Daeyoon, do you have any other ideas about when we might use biases to make a decision?
I think when politics are involved, I think we usually make our decisions, or uh, we usually, when we are doing debate, I think when it is connected with politics, I think people get biased often, and I think what they are talking about, or what they are or when they are doing a debate, I think it could be a little bit biased, or it could be mixed up with some confirmative biases.
Yeah, for sure. That confirmation bias idea there, especially in debate, can be a big deal. So thanks for bringing that debate background in. We love to hear it. Anybody else have any ideas about when we might use biases to make a decision? Or when will biases influence the way we make decisions? Maybe Yongchan?
Um, when we do gambling, like we can have optimistic bias.
I love that. That is a great example. Yeah, that optimistic bias towards we need to, especially in gambling, it's probably a quick decision, or you're trying to simplify the math that's going behind it, and you're just thinking, oh, there's the chance that I can win. There's the chance that I can win. So you make that quick decision and you use the bias to make that shortcut in your mind. So great answers here, everybody. Thanks so much for willing to participate. Love that. And now we've got this example here. Can I get a volunteer to read out this example? And the KRW just means won, Korean won, your money. Can I get a volunteer to read out this for the class? Yes, Will, go ahead.
Imagine you're looking to buy a laptop. The first laptop you see in the store costs 100만 원. The next laptop you see is 80만 원. Based only in the price alone, you decide to get the second laptop because it's a good deal.
Thank you. Thanks so much for reading. So before we move on, I'd love to get checks and X's from everybody on whether you think there's a bias at play here. So in Zoom, you should be able to go into the little reacting heart thing and see a yes or a no. And so I want to hear, do you think there's a bias here? Yes or no? And press the check or the X. And I want to see an answer from everybody before we move on. So I'll wait for you to write a check or an X, and it's okay. Doesn't need to be right. We'll get a, we'll get the, someone will tell us whether it's right or wrong soon. Got lots of checks, not X's. Got a lot of checks here coming up. Looks like almost everybody has selected a check. And let's go ahead and ask someone who has selected a check to tell us why they think there's a bias here. So, Soyeon, is that how you say your name? I hope I'm saying it right, Soyeon. Um,
Yeah, it's right.
Great. Sorry. There's two. There's So-an and So-yan. Yes? And I want to go to So-yan, the one who wasn't here yesterday. So So-yan Park. Um, Sorry about that. My fault. And can you tell us why you think there's a bias here?
I think there's a bias here because we're only considering the price of the laptop without any consideration of other properties like the microphone skills or camera or other programs you can do with um, a higher price laptop.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. That was exactly what I was looking for there. They're only considering the price, right? And so now I'd love to ask someone, anyone in the class, what they think the bias is that we're seeing here. What's the name of the bias? And feel free to open up your notes, that pre-class work document, and skim through and see which bias it might be. But Siwan might know. Go ahead, Siwan.
I think it might be a anchoring bias. It's
You're
a
correct.
tendency to, oh,
No, no, go ahead. Keep going.
I keep going.
You were saying something. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, 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 it's fine.
Okay. So you are very much correct. It is the anchoring bias when you're relying too heavily on the first piece of information you encounter. So this person relied on the case of the first laptop of just seeing the price. And just like Soyan said, they might not have considered any of the other things. Maybe the 800,000 laptop, the cheaper laptop, maybe it won't last more than 2 weeks. It'll break down. Whereas the 1 million, the more expensive laptop will last you for the full year of your classes. And so they bought the smaller, cheaper laptop because it was just cheaper and relied straight on the price. So great job to everybody there. So now we're going to move into our prep poll for the day, which you can use your notes from the reading to help you answer if you need. And you'll have about 5 minutes, maybe less if everybody finishes before those 5 minutes are up. And then we'll debrief together to make sure everybody's on the same page. So this prep poll says, which of the following sentences best explains the relationship between algorithmic thinking and cognitive biases? I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to bring up the prep poll for you all. And you should be able to see it now. And I'm going to give you about 5 minutes or less, maybe 4, to answer this poll. Okay. Okay, just about 2 minutes left. Like almost everybody is done here though. So once the last person puts it in, which they just put in their poll response, looks like we can go ahead and end this poll early. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and then I will share the results with you. So it looks like we're all pretty much on the right track. Just had one person answer the first thing, the first answer, and that's okay. This poll is not graded, so it's totally okay. We're going to talk about why number 2 is the correct answer. But first, let's see. I'd love to hear from someone who chose number 2 and can tell us a little bit more about why they chose number 2 and why you think it's the correct answer here. Yongchan, go ahead.
As you know, algorithmic thinking is a step-by-step thinking, and it is also done by a human. So, yeah, still cognitive bias can influence the algorithmic thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Humans, we're all fallible in some way, shape, or form, right? We might have a simple bias that makes it difficult for us to write the steps in the perfect way. So it can definitely influence the design of our algorithm. Great. Anybody else want to talk a little bit about this? Maybe give an example or anything before we move on? Siwan, go ahead.
Um, the algorithm itself kind of sorts through or weighs information, but the person that programs the algorithm chooses certain topics or certain areas that they think is important, that they think uh, is more connected to the problem, would that would eventually make a biased answer, a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So that person who is choosing what the algorithm will go step by step on might make a mistake or have a certain bias that will affect the way they make that algorithm go step by step by step. Just like how yesterday, when we talked about what's the first step of a sandwich, right? And someone said, gather all the ingredients. And then another person said, decide what recipe to start with. And so there are different ways to start your algorithm based on what you assume about the other person. So it can be an interesting experience of writing that algorithm or doing that algorithm with a cognitive bias, a different bias like that. So everybody get that? Everybody understand how biases can impact the design of algorithms? We're all good? Seeing nods, seeing thumbs up. Love that. Great. Okay, so we're going to go and delve deeper into a specific bias today, and that's going to be our cognitive bias. Sorry, it's going to be confirmation bias. So, confirmation bias. Can anyone tell me what confirmation bias is? What is confirmation bias? Brave souls, a hand? Does anyone know what confirmation bias is? Maybe Jongwoo, do you know what confirmation bias is?
네?
Yes, you. Sorry? And the hint is that it's on the screen. If you needed a hint.
Accepting information that is the same as your existing knowledge, I believe.
Absolutely. That's great. Thanks for reading that out. And yeah, that's confirmation bias. Does anyone have an example of what a confirmation bias is? Like an example of confirmation bias in your life that you may have been seeing at any point? Or maybe one of you has been prey to this bias before, and you have done this bias in the past. You've made this mental shortcut. So I think for myself, when I was in college, researching papers, when I always wanted to find work that was similar to the work that I was doing, so that I knew that I was on the right track. And so that's my example of confirmation bias is I was writing a paper and I always wanted to look for results of other papers that had the same type of conclusion that I had. So yes, this happened. And I was looking for the information that was the exact same. That was, oh, yes, this happened in this scenario. And so this idea of confirmation bias is looking for something that is the same as your existing belief, the thing that you already know. So I believed that this thing happened, and I wanted to make sure that it happened at other people's research in my own research. So let's go ahead and move into our little activity on this. And before we get into it, I want to ask, why do we want to reduce biases? Why do we want to reduce them? Maybe Wanjun? Any idea why we want to reduce biases?
Uh, because when we make decisions, we tend to solve problem fastly, and when the bias is always used in this fast decision, then that decision is possibly go wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, great answer, Wanjun. Thanks so much for being brave. For sure, when we make a quick decision with a bias, which is a mental shortcut, it can sometimes lead to things going wrong. And that's exactly correct. So, can I have someone read out this little scenario for us, starting with John over here? Maybe So on. Can you read this for us?
Ron is preparing for an upcoming math exam. He strongly believes that watching YouTube videos is the best way to study because it has worked for him in the past. When his friend Tina suggests solving practice problems from the textbook, John, being a YouTube fan, finds yet another video that supports his idea that YouTube videos are the best way to learn. John failed his math exam.
Thanks, So on, for reading that. Yeah, so John failed. Womp womp. Oh no. John failed his math exam. That's not good. And so I want to just ask these three questions to people in the class. So maybe we go to uh, Junso and ask, what happened here?
John got tracked into his bias and failed his exam.
Yeah, he was trapped by his own confirmation bias and failed his math exam because of it. So what do we think he could have done better? Anybody, anybody have any ideas? What could John have done better? What could have gone better here? Maybe Yerim? Yerim?
Yes, I think if John listened Tina's
advice, the situation will go better.
Yeah, if he just listened to Tina's advice and maybe said, "Oh, solve some practice problems from the textbook," maybe it would have gone better. I think so too. Great answer. Thanks, Yareem. That's great. And then, how do you think that would have changed the outcome of his exam? Do you think he would have passed if he would change that unsold? Do you think he would pass?
I think he will pass the exam because not only watching video, he can solve many problems before the test, so he could done better in solving real test problems.
Yeah, definitely. Getting some practice on the test, he could actually solve the questions instead of just watching the YouTube videos. So great, 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 great. Now we're going to go ahead and go and create our own sort of recipe like yesterday, but a slightly different. Instead, we're going to create a plan for avoiding confirmation bias. So I'm going to just copy the definition of confirmation bias from there to here. Oops. And I'd love to hear from all of you. What would a plan look like for avoiding confirmation bias for us? Anybody have any ideas? I want to get at least 3 or 4 parts of how do we avoid confirmation bias in the future. We're going to write ourselves a little algorithm of sorts. How do we avoid confirmation bias? Maybe Soyan, you got any ideas?
Not just looking at your own opinion, you have to look through others' opinion and why they think that way so that you have reasons of what you say.
Great. Yeah, looking for other opinions and why they think that way so that you can get out of your own little box, right? Getting out of your own confirmation bias. Anybody else? Some other ideas? Maybe let's go to our fun debate guy, Dayoon. In debate, how do you avoid confirmation bias?
I think people usually use resources that are mostly true, like they used special books, or I think maybe they sometimes use dictionaries too.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to start off, right? Using resources that are factually true and fact checking the information. I'm going to go ahead and write that. Fact checking the information so that you know that the information that you're going off of itself is true. Um, and then, yeah, any other ideas here on how to avoid confirmation bias? Yongchan, go ahead.
You should cognitively search for other opinions that is against your opinion, that which is against your opinion.
Yes, even more specific than just looking for other opinions, but looking for opinions that go against your own opinion, right? So I think that's great. I'm going to go ahead and put that as number 2 since it's pretty similar to number 1, but it's slightly different. And that's very important. And looking for something that goes against your own opinion. Anybody else have any more? C1, go ahead.
I think the emotional feelings you might have about a certain subject might actually influence your decisions a lot, such as fear or disgust about a certain uh, yes, about a certain
And
action.
so what are we going to do to avoid Or maybe how are we going to use that in confirmation bias, like getting away from confirmation bias?
I think you need to look at it from a third person perspective. Step out of your own self, I guess.
Great. I love it. Great job, everybody. These are some great ways to avoid confirmation bias. And as we go throughout the year, when you're doing your own research and you're thinking of your own large questions, I really encourage you to use this type of recipe, this plan to steer yourself away from confirmation bias because there's so much out there in the world and we all only have our past experiences behind us. And it's such a small sphere of the world that we have experienced. And so looking for things that contradict our experience is one of the best ways to learn about the world at large. So great. Awesome job. We're going to go ahead and take a little eye rest break. Yes. So most classes, I like to take a little eye rest break in the middle for about 2-3 minutes where you close your eyes or talk to the people around you. And instead of looking at screens, we look at each other. So if you haven't met the person beside you, or maybe you haven't talked to them in a little while, maybe ask them what their favorite drink is, or their favorite sport, or where their hometown is, and get to know each other for a little bit. And I'll play some music. And then I'll call you guys back after about 2.5 minutes. So go ahead and turn your cameras off, but don't wander away too far. Stretch it out. Yeah, Jongwoo, stretch it out. Great. And I'll see you guys in about 2.5 minutes, okay? Okay, everybody. Start coming on back to your cameras. Hello, hello. I hope you enjoyed the music. If you have any requests, feel free to let me know via the chat or any other way that you might see fit. I wanted to mention cameras and faces. So if there was a way that I could maybe possibly see all of your wonderful faces instead of just your forehead and eyes, that would be really nice. And don't worry, I'm not going to judge you at all. But it would help me so I can read your lips as you're talking, just so I don't get any of the English wrong or anything. So great. Thanks so much for doing that. You guys are wonderful. And yeah, let's keep going with class. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides one more time. Okay, welcome back. We're now going to do our main activity for the day. We're going to split into our breakout groups and devise an evacuation plan for your school. So there will be more instructions in the breakouts about this, but you're going to have about 10 to 20 minutes to complete the task, just depending on how quick you guys work. I'll give you more time if you need it. And then after the breakouts, we'll have a discussion about how you evacuated your school. I'm going to go ahead and drop the documents in the chat now. Before we get started, let's see. Let me make sure I have the right ones. Okay. 1 second. Okay, so I've got group 1 and group 2, 3 and group 4, and group 5. Okay, so when you get into your breakout rooms, it'll say your room number at the top of the room. And so you'll know which one of these documents to click into. Don't need to click into it right now. And then at the top of this document that you guys are working on, if you could write your names at the top, that would be great. And then just like yesterday, when you get into your breakout groups, please feel free to get up, move around, and sit down with your breakout groups. But if one person could maybe keep their camera on inside of each breakout group, just so I know like where you're at, and I can come in and check on you every 10 minutes or so, just to check on you. So only one person needs to keep it on. But otherwise, feel free to just converse and get into your groups and have a good time talking. So I'm going to go ahead and set up these breakout rooms really quickly. You'll be in random groups and go ahead and join your breakout room. See you on the other side, okay? For our YouTube audience, this is a good time now. They've got about 20 minutes in their breakout group, maybe 10 to 15, depending on how fast they work. This group is working very fast and they are very willing to talk, which is wonderful. I love seeing it. So brave souls out here talking, which is great. But it's a good chance for YouTube folks to take a little break if you're watching on YouTube. I went and checked on them in their breakout groups. They seem to all be doing well, so now I'm back here just checking on them through their breakup group documents and watching their progress. They've got about 10 minutes left, but I suspect they might need a little bit more time to write out their evacuation message. So we'll likely give them a little bit more time since we're running quite early, which is good. Hello, group. Group one. No, not group one. Group three. No, group five. I don't know. Welcome back. Group four. All the names are right here, but I was like, need to figure out which ones are which. Welcome back. Welcome back. Good to see you. Good to see you. Just waiting for everyone to come back in. Everyone will be forced to return in 5 seconds. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Go ahead and turn those cameras back on. Get those smiling faces back on the screen so we can see your faces, hopefully the whole thing. If not, that's okay, but we're trying to see our whole faces. And we're going to debrief these breakouts. We're going to talk about your conundrums of evacuating from your school. Oh no, the floods are coming. How will we get away? Will we take the highway or will we take the back roads? So, you guys didn't know this, but in these breakout groups, there were 2 different groups participating. One group had to get out within hours. They only had hours to get out of the school, and they didn't have information on the highways and the back roads, whether or not they were full of traffic or not. And the other group had a whole week to get out. And they had exact data on the weather and the traffic and when it was going to be trafficy. And so I'd love to go first to the group, one of the groups that had hours to get out, just a few hours to get out. And I'd love to hear about your scenarios and all of that kind of stuff. So give me 1 second. It seems my headphones just died. I'm going to plug in my other headphones real quick. But if anyone wants to raise their hand, okay. Hello, can you hear me? Now my microphone is right next to my face, so you might even be able to hear me slightly better than before. Okay, so I'd love to hear from a group that had only hours to get away from that location. And when you're presenting, I want you to explain the constraints that you had, explain your approach and your solution, and the biases that you either used or tried to avoid in it. So let's see. Looks like group one had hours to get away. So I'd love to go to someone in group one to present this.
Sorry, I didn't hear what to present.
Right. So I want you to present your scenario and the constraints, your approach, and really like your the thing you wrote for this evacuation message, and then the decision-making process and how you decided why to go down that route and what biases you might have avoided or tried to avoid when making those decisions. So here's your document. Looks like you have some stuff down here, so I'll scroll down so you can see that and go ahead.
Okay, we have our city has been is severe storm warming with flooding expected to begin within hours. So our task is to decide an evacuation plan for our school. And we prepare a brief evacuation message to send a school staff and students. We will send a message that all school staff and students must go to Route 1 as fast as possible. You know that Route 2 is not safe for flood, so you should go where you're accustomed to so that you can make a quick route to their arrival point.
We used our cognitive BAs instead of like ignoring it. So we choose route 1 using attentional BAs and confirmation BAs. We thought that we have three components, familiarity, crowd, and safety. And in case we cannot take advantage of all three factors, we used attentional BAs, considering only safety, ignoring other components.
On the first look, we assume that the highway will have a better drainage system, which will give us more time to get out of the city. This one major benefit worked as resulting in choosing Route 1, although the back road may also have a good drainage system. In this case, this could be a confirmation bias because we are only looking at one good point of Route 1. We're making a decision without looking at the other benefits of Route 2.
Wow.
So the summary, by confirmation bias, we only accept the information that Route 1 is familiar. After that, attentional bias affects us not to hear about disadvantage of it.
Oh, nice round of applause for group one. Yay. Great job, group one. Yes. Yeah, great job, group one. That was wonderful to hear all of you guys talking about this and the biases that you guys decided on for this situation. I really liked it, how you brought in some biases that we didn't even talk about, attentional bias. So great job there. Um, and now I'd love to go to another group that had the week to evacuate. So I'm not sure which group would like to present. Let's see. How far did we get? Group two and group four, I think, had that. So does group two or group four want to present their decisions? Anybody? Siwon and Jungwoo are talking about it. I think they might be ready to present, maybe. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So,
Okay. So actually, the amount of options that we had was actually made it confusing. So in this case, we actually we assumed that we would be planning the evacuation for a week and then evacuating at the same time the flood hits and all the other town people are evacuating as well. We said for the evacuation message, we said use the well-known highway for evacuation. The school buses will be used to aid with the evacuation. The weather conditions show that the back roads to be an available option, but the back roads are congested more heavily than the highway. We used the exact data on current traffic and weather updates for the routes that we had. Yes, the goal we had to identify and mitigate biases is I don't I don't know how we were supposed to do that when we have exact data. It was confusing. Yes.
yeah. I think you guys did a good job of really just using that exact data and questioning the breakout to its extremes. So, great job there and looking at it this way because if you know that you have exact data, group two and group four, you can really make it up as you see fit. You could say, oh, well, we know that the highway is not going to be congested, or we know that the back roads are not going to be congested at this time. And so in that way, since you have a lot more time, you're able to reduce the bias because you have that data available to you. So this little sentence here is like, what data or strategies could help reduce biases? Like for you guys, it's obvious. You have all the data, and that totally obliterates the biases that a lot of them that you could have. But of course, maybe because you have that data, you still relied on, oh, a highway, because I'm familiar that a highway is a fast way out. And so maybe that's still a bias that you have just because um, you know what a highway is and how it can get people out quickly. And so you chose to say that the lower roads are going to be blocked anyways. But I love to see how you guys questioned the breakout and used all of the things at your disposal to create a nice plan here. So, great. So we saw how group A, or the first groups, used the confirmation bias or tried to mitigate the confirmation bias um, or use it well. And group B probably had a safer evacuation because they have so much data and were able to mitigate those biases intentionally. And I wanted to ask you a question. When do you think it is okay to resort to a biased approach? When is it okay to use the biases to make that shortcut? Maybe someone from one of the groups that did not present. So maybe so on. When is it okay to use biases?
When I have a lack of time.
Lack of time. Yeah, especially seeing in this breakout for the groups that only had hours, and they don't even have exact data either. Um, it's okay to use those biases that you need to make the specific decisions and have good reasoning behind it, especially since there's only hours. And so keeping people safe and assuming that the highway will have some sort of drainage system was a great way of using a little bit amount of knowledge and taking that to an extreme on those biases to make a great decision. So great answer there. And can you think of any other examples where we might use a bias as a shortcut to be efficient? Any examples? Any ideas where we might use biases? It's not the evacuation plan. Anybody? Any examples? If not, that's okay. But I'd love to have a brave soul. Well, for now, that's okay because we're going to learn more about biases as these classes go on. But of course, there's so many ways that we use biases in our day-to-day lives, whether we think about the news and only search out news that is associated with what we think, or we think about other people in a way that is biased and we think, oh, maybe they're like this because they're of this certain race, ethnicity. They went to this high school, so they are qualified for this. Those are all biases that we take in our daily life. Maybe because you're going to Hanyang University, someone will think you're super smart, or the other way around, and that's a bias as well. So depends on how you see it, all those things. So let's go ahead and move to our reflection poll of the day. And our reflection poll is, when do you think relying on biases is acceptable, and when might it be risky? And you'll have about 5 minutes to answer this poll. And then after that, we'll have a little summary of the day, and that'll be pretty much it. So let's go to our reflection poll for today. So I'm going to go ahead and start a timer for you. You'll have 5 minutes. When do you think relying on biases is acceptable, and when might it be risky? Feel free to give an example if you want. Okay, I'll stop talking. Got about 2 minutes. All good, Jongwoo. I think I saw a whiteboard come up at some point. So I think we're all good, but just keep doing your poll. If we need a little bit more time on the poll, that's okay. Just take your time and write thoughtful answers. So we have time. We have time. Got about 1 minute left. Let's go ahead and finish up those responses. What was that? Oh, it's hilarious. That was the timer going off, which I've never heard a timer go off like that. Have you? Um, Usually I get the zzz or that kind of thing. That was kind of nice that it wasn't a terrible sound, but very interesting. Looks like everyone has submitted their poll answers. I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll, and then I'm gonna share out the results. So you should be able to see only your response, I believe. And so I'd love to hear from two people, or maybe more, on when you think relying on biases is acceptable and when might it be risky. And I'd love to start with Ju Hyung.
I think that relying on biases is acceptable when we don't have enough time to think, but there are so many things to consider. If we consider all the things, we won't get a good solution. But if we just consider the most important things and use our biases to think quickly, we might get better results. Also, I think that relying on biases might be risky when we know that some people would feel bad about the decisions uh, from the biases.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. Did you have more to say?
No, no.
Okay. That's a great answer. Yeah, absolutely. When we have to make a quick decision and there's so much to consider, using biases can help us make that mental shortcut. But it can be risky when we don't want to hurt other people. So that's great. Anybody else want to share their response? I'll take some volunteers before we move on. Maybe Yeonsang or Yunsang. I don't know how to say it. Maybe. Oh, I can't hear you.
I think when you meet people for the first time, uh, because if you have biases, then less risk. Yeah. And I think when you study a new information, uh, you must not have biases.
Yeah, when we're studying new things, we want to try and get out of our box, right? We talked about trying not to have so much confirmation bias when we're doing something new to us. Um, and yeah, that's a great one to have, especially when you don't want to be too risky. Getting out of your comfort zone and learning about other opinions first before taking a deep dive into it. So, great job, everybody. If anyone wants to share out, feel free to raise your hand. But otherwise, I think we're going to move on to our summary of class today. So, let's go ahead and ask, or I'll share my slides first, which is not much to share, but the slides, here they are. And I'd love to come to one or two students to ask, what did you learn in class today? Or could you summarize class today in a few short sentences? And what did you learn? So I'll take some volunteers, but of course, if I need to, I'll call on some people. So anybody want to volunteer what you might have learned today about biases? What did you learn? Yes, Ul, go ahead.
I learned that when can I use the bias effectively, like a dangerous situation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Yeah, we learned how to use biases effectively when there's like a dangerous situation presented to you. 100%. That is a great way we're going to figure out how to use we figured out how to use biases effectively and avoid them if needed. So great. Anybody else have another takeaway or summary of today's session? Siwan, go ahead.
I think from the breakout we did just now, I think biases show up more evidently when there isn't an exact answer. Then people tend to use biases more when they can't find information. It's it's like an instinct, I suppose.
Yeah. It's that mental shortcut that we take when we're in situations that we don't know exactly the right thing to assume, and we want to assume that our own past knowledge is the right one, so we use confirmation bias, or we want to assume something about another person, and we use hasty generalization or something around those lines. So, while biases can be helpful in specific contexts, recognizing their risks is essential for making informed, ethical, and logical decisions. So, great job today. Thanks, Yesul and Siwan, for just providing us some takeaways there and volunteering. And thank you, everyone, for your participation and for letting me call on you. I know it can be daunting to be called on in class throughout, but that's going to be how we're doing it for the rest of this year together. So, would love to be able to see hands raised whenever, of course. But if that doesn't happen, I'll call on you. And I like calling on all of you and hearing your wonderful opinions and your great voices on all of these things. And you're doing a great job, by the way. So today, you're going to have your first collaboratory after your lunch break, and you'll be applying today's ideas to some more like real world scenarios. So just like the evacuation plan, you'll be applying your ideas to um, like some other real world applications. Today, I think you're going to be talking about ChatGPT and AI, if you've heard of those. And I'll be in office hours after that 1 hour lunch break for about 2 hours. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to come see me in those office hours during that time. Okay? So let's go ahead and show you on my screen. You should see collaboratory here, right? And so you'll see your groups for this. This will also be in your Hanyang on in that platform. And so you should be able to see these groups as well in that platform. And you'll work together. And oh, yeah, if you need it, you should be able to find it here inside of this group document. And so you'll be able to see your group name and you'll make a copy of this worksheet and you'll be submitting it on Canvas or HY on, which is that name of your online platform. And so you'll want to copy it and then you'll be working together on this real world scenario on biases in ChatGPT and AI generated writing. So you don't need to read this right now. You'll be reading it during your collaboratory together, and then you'll be writing in these boxes, just like a big, long breakout group, and then you'll be submitting it on your online platform for me to give you feedback on it tomorrow. And this will be how we do it for most of the week. So if you have any questions about it, please definitely let me know. If someone's absent from your group, try to talk with them externally about these works so that they can contribute like reflection and contributions at the end. But yeah, that is pretty much it for today. So if you have any questions, please feel free to stay behind and ask me. But otherwise, I think you guys are off to lunch, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye bye.
Just one question before I go. Uh, when we have questions during office hours, do we go into this Zoom, this link right here?
So there is a different Zoom link. It's on
Okay.
it's on that
The
online platform.
Canvas. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Canvas.
Thank you.
Yep, of course. Bye, C1.